Society, Zimbabweans' inheritance is an important aspect. It is a way of passing on wealth, property, and values from one generation to the next. However, the process of inheritance can be complex and contentious. As we explore this topic tonight, we will be delving into the intricacies of deceased estate distribution and inheritance in Zimbabwe. We will also examine the laws that govern this process, the role of the Master of the High Court, and the importance of having a valid will. The discussion will also focus on some of the common challenges that arise during this process and providing guidance on how to navigate them. The intersection of customary law and modern legislation in Zimbabwe will also be explored. Customary law plays a significant role in shaping inheritance practices, particularly in rural areas. However, this can sometimes lead to conflicts with modern laws and expectations. To help me delve more into this discussion, I'm joined in the studio by Mr. Eldad Mutasa. He's the Master of the High Court of Zimbabwe. Welcome to Star FM, Mutasa.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Msumba.
Senguva dzose makasununguka kutinyorera maererano nenyaya yekuchengetedzwa nekugovwa kwenhaka yemushakabvu iyo iri mudariro redu nhasi. To you, our valued listeners, please feel free to join the discussion on our WhatsApp platform 0772162651. This one is going to be a hot one, Vamtasa, so let's get into it because I know a lot of people will be asking a lot of questions. Mibvunzo yakawanda nenyaya idzodzidzi dzenhaka zvinosiyiwa nemufi zvoitwa sei. Vamwe vafamba makore makawanda vachingotevera nyaya dzacho hatisati budisisina sisi vakutodzvinyana nenyaya idzodzidzi. Saka ndofunga kuti chirongwa chanhasi chichatsanangura kuti zvinofamba sei uyezve zvingareruka sei kuti vanhu varambe vakayanana vasarovana kana zvaitwa nenzira kwayo. If you can just start by taking us through the steps involved in reporting a deceased estate to the Master of High Court. What is the process here? What are the steps?
Thank you so much for having me and for giving me this opportunity to share with the members of the public, all the listeners, on the administration of deceased estates in Zimbabwe. Let me start by saying that Zimbabwe is a country which has laws, and it is pertinent that each and every citizen, beloved nation, should follow the law. When it comes to winding up or administration of deceased estates, we all know that this is not an exciting topic because we are talking about the loss of a loved one. Emotions are bound to rise, and there are there's a lot of misunderstandings within families. There's also a lot of myths surrounding the issue of inheritance. So much that you will notice the law provides that when a person dies, the estate should be registered within 14 days of death. That is in accordance with Section 5 of the Administration of Estates Act, Chapter 601. It provides that a deceased estate should be registered within 14 days of death, not 14 days of burial. But then what happens from the society that we come from? We have a surviving spouse who's expected to register the estate. And the moment that person suggests the registration of an estate at the office of the Master of the High Court, the next question is, Urugumanyire. You see, courts. You see, it's too early. Yet, this person is compelled by law to register a deceased estate within 14 days. And failure to register within 14 days, it attracts a penalty. The law actually provides that a person can be fined for failing to register an estate within 14 days. A person can actually be incarcerated for 30 days for failing to register a deceased estate. It's just that we are fortunate we are not yet enforcing that law, but it's there. You see, so one needs simply to complete what we call a death notice form and an inventory form, and you need to bring a death certificate. That is, if it has been acquired. Yes, it's not a statutory requirement for registration of a deceased estate. It's required mainly for administration of a deceased estate. But for purpose of registration, it's not a statutory requirement, but it will be good to provide one as you register the estate. Then we are given my forms at our office. Any nearest office that you would have approached, you get that notice, you get the inventory form, you complete those forms, and then we assign a deceased estate registration number. So for we also require a marriage certificate, a copy of a marriage certificate, copy of a marriage certificate. For those who may not have a marriage certificate, you are in an unregistered customer law union, you need to submit an affidavit that you would have completed yourself as a spouse, indicating the nature of relationship that you had with the deceased, that is the unregistered nature of customary law union that you had with the deceased. That affidavit may be supported by one or two relatives, but it's not a must that it should be supported. For registration purposes, it's not prejudicial to anybody, so we can permit a person just to complete his or her own affidavit confirming his or her status as a spouse. But you must know that it's always open to some challenges by those who may not be sharing the same view that we are a surviving spouse. Vanouya utorota kwewaigunyora affidavit zvichuti nomukadzi wacho kana kuti murume wacho hatina kumboona pawakaroorwa kana kuti hatina kumboona paakaroora, as the case may be. So we always encourage people to enter into registered marriages so that it becomes easy to prove your status. So that's the steps and the requirements. Yeah.
So how does the Master of the High Court oversee the process of estate distribution and inheritance, and which law governs the process in Zimbabwe?
Okay. Yeah, the Master's role is to ensure an orderly distribution of assets in accordance with the laws of the country. That's our primary mandate, our primary function, to ensure that there is orderly distribution of the deceased person's assets. How do we do that? Like you mentioned, there are laws in place. If you are married in terms of the Marriage Act, chapter, I would say in terms of the general law, marriage, which is a one man, one wife marriage, your estate is distributed. If you die, your estate is distributed in accordance with what we call the Deceased Estate Succession Act, chapter 602. So for anyone who is in a marriage in terms of the general law, Doma chapter 5, my former chapter 511, in the former chapter 37, now my marriages have been harmonized under one law, chapter 517. But it's a monogamous marriage. So if you're in a monogamous marriage and you do not have a will, be sure to know that your estate will be distributed in terms of the Deceased Estate Succession Act, chapter 602. The inheritance formulas are provided. I think that is a discussion for another day. Then if you are married customarily, or in terms of customary law, registered or unregistered, the estate then is distributed in terms of the Administration of Estates Act, chapter 601, section 68. The section which provides the general guidelines for distribution of assets in a customary law estate is particularly section 68F. It provides for the formulas, who should get what. Yeah, so those are the laws that govern distribution of assets. Then we have the Wills Act, chapter 606. It provides for execution of wills, how to execute a valid will, and distribution of estates in terms of the will. So if we have got a will, as long as the provisions in your will are lawful, the distribution will be done in accordance with your will. And on that point, Mr. Msumba, I can mention that there's always been a debate or an issue surrounding responsible wills and irresponsible will. They are both valid because they would have been properly executed, well signed and witnessed. They meet all requirements of a valid will. But when it comes to distribution, depending on my circumstances, and I can know that will you indeed. I'm somewhere. Then I choose to award the most expensive car to somebody else other than my wife. And then I award the least expensive. Kamota ke manga pamota zangu, look up my wife. You see. So you find Namwechi girlfriend. You want an expensive car. It's the expense of my wife. And they want pamwema valuable assets. I to people other than Vanawako. For no valid reasons. You see. So we call that my irresponsible wills. Because a will is supposed to cater for your family, to provide, to ensure there is continuity. They continue with the comfort that they were used to. But because sometimes we wait to write my wills when we are wasted and we are no longer in control of our surroundings and even our mental faculties, you end up sometimes wakunyora zvinhu zvisiri. At least pakaprovonzi you were not mentally okay. The will can be challenged on that ground. But mental and it's mental in the sense that wafaris on the environment he currently obtaining. Feel out in whole life. Won't go to get carried away momentarily. Then you want to know what to sign this, what to do. So those wills, it's normal owner, and it will be difficult to explain to the other surviving spouse or children to say it's valid because it meets requirements of a valid will, and it may not be responsible, but it's valid. Then they will ask you with munombo accept my wills agadaro, mon as irresponsible. So this is giving me or giving us a platform now to say, when it comes to my issues and my wills, we must write them till sober, till overexcited, till depression, because ukurongera muri yako. You see, zokuti waenda kwa marwe, waenda ku girlfriend, waenda ku boyfriend, waenda ku wongova excited at that moment, and vamwe vacho vakangwarisa nobva kudzoti ndine laptop neprinter. Chingondiprotecta somehow by writing something. Utona munhu audi kunyora. Isa zvinozotipa headaches because even kuchallenge will yakadaro kunonetsa, especially kana ichimita all the requirements of a valid will. Because munhu ane right yekunyora will achipa munhu waanoda. So ndo magoverwe enhaka muZimbabwe kuti pane Deceased Estate Succession Act, Administration of Estates Act, chapter 601 section 68F pama customary law estates, then kozoti in terms of the will.
pakava nekupembera nekufara masmall house pakabuda mamarriage laws manyuwanaya zvinzi vakukwanisawo kuinherita ndizvo here?
Yeah, raising a very interesting issue. That is not true. I can speak from experience and from my knowledge. Yeah, the Marriages Act. There's been a lot of misconceptions surrounding this new Marriage Act. There's been a lot of misinterpretation. And I think it would be fair for people to wait also for the High Court to make a pronouncement on the matter, to make a determination, to give guidance on the interpretation. But before we get clear guidance, people should make an effort to also understand, just by reading from the relevant act, particularly section 41, which introduces civil partnerships. Kuti what does the law say? Literally, kungoerenga, even usiri lawyer. Maona, I think it's clear kuti what is a civil partnership. If I need to go through the relevant section 41, it provides it's a relationship between a man and a woman who are both over the age of 18 years and they've lived together without legally being married to each other. They've lived together without legally being married to each other. And having regard to all the circumstances of their relationship, you have a relationship as a couple living together on a genuine domestic basis. Man, vanhu vanotora kuti ma-adults vari kutogara vese with some degree of permanence on a genuine. Saka ukanga patongobuda genuine domestic basis, my thinking is the small house is out, girlfriend is out, mona. And even in circumstances where you prove kuti you meet these requirements, sekuti you are living together on a genuine, womva akodwa status yacho civil partnership. That status, you can only enjoy it at dissolution. It's determined at dissolution of that relationship. I determine during the course. Kuti nine as I live in Totora kuti Joyce is my civil partner. And Joyce oti Eldad is my civil partner. It's only on dissolution of that relationship. And paku determine kuti who is kuti does one qualify to be a civil partner. Law yakanola clearly. It's indicated clearly in our acts. Kuti, what does the court look at? These are, I will highlight quickly mama elements that the court would consider. Number one, duration of the relationship. Number two, nature and extent of their common residence. Number three, whether a sexual relationship exists. Number four, degree of financial dependence or interdependence and any financial arrangements or support between them. Number five, the ownership, use and acquisition of their property. Number six, degree of mutual commitment to a shared life. The issue of partner. Number seven, the care and support of children. Lastly, the reputation and the public aspects of the relationship. That's why I would say kuti asimuna no vanzwa vanzwa. Aiwa, civil partner atori neimwe level repamsoro, but in the context of this discussion, even aka enjoy that status, koti amuti you are a civil partner. That person is not automatically entitled to inherit. Because you don't enjoy the status of being a wife or husband or a surviving spouse. You remain a civil partner. So, Mr. Musuma, we are having a challenge almost every week in, week out to know 1, 2, 3 women on average. I'm entitled to inherit from the estate Yapit. Why? Because I was a civil partner Yapit. What declare when you go to the civil partner and dinner? But Tomu Zafutu, even you can declare, I was entitled. ukazomubvunza kuti upon what basis are you claiming to be a civil partner, anokudza kuti Peter I visit every Friday kumba kwangu, pamwe aitoita 2 days 3 days, but utotaura wega kuti I visit. One is a visit, so it means pamwe ari muklasi either your boyfriend, but even akazonzi maive ne-civil partnership, a relationship, you are not entitled to anything. So if you, I don't know why people have demonized this law. To be honest, I view it as progressive, especially look at the elements S and that all. And I must mention at this point, the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, through Department of Rural Development Commission, you have been having campaigns, awareness campaigns on this law, because there were distortions which were created through social media platforms. You see, so they've been making campaigns, just that people may not attend for one reason or another, but if they were to attend, they will benefit in terms of understanding the import of Section 41. And I must mention, maybe lastly on this, even the Honorable Minister of Justice himself, Honorable Ziambe, now, he would always say, I've been approached, the Mamma groups, and no support my rights, and my chichi, Vachida could demonize this law. And he would simply ask them a question, can you show me where this law is bad? Just 1 point, but it's a bad law. And one of us, because we're not parties as a show, just reading objectively. Not, there's nothing wrong with this law. Tell me, sure, my parliamentarians, Vanga Garipasi, Vokulitsa law, and His Excellency, Vosaina, Vasinga one ma red flags. You see, they applied their minds. Not, this is progressive because mukazoita topic for another day, teaching out in a time. And the mukadeta at the relevant, like the Local Development Commission and Dr. and Chick, you will find kuti unonya to unpack was okunya not. This is more beneficial than what is being portrayed. So people should learn and understand this law. When I go back to sexual relations, that's why I'm going to social media. If you stay with a person for 2 weeks, and at home for 3 months, it's no way in the laws. And I know formalities. And I'm then you become legally married.
My producer, Papa, I think that's a topic that shout out to Zopinda Mairi. The program is State of Affairs here on Star FM, and tonight we are unpacking the distribution of the deceased estates and inheritance in Zimbabwe. And I'm honored to be having the studio Eldad Mutasa. He's the master of the High Court of Zimbabwe, and he's already touched on a number of issues, and the messages have come through. I will come to the messages soon, but there are certain issues that we want to just clear so that pamunozobvunza dzimwe mibvunzo dzinenge dzatombopindurwa namaster vedu vekuhigh court vaMutasa. Another issue here is how are assets of the deceased estate identified, valued, and distributed, and what role do executors play in the estate distribution process? Iri very important because pane vamwe vanomboya kunoku vachiti tanzwa nekufamba nenyaya idzi tiringoshedzwa kumaconference ina lawyer but hapana zviri kufamba zvatotora 4 or 5 years. Vana mama mudhara akashaya kana mama vese vakashaya, but imba takutongorwisana maloya maexecutor aya vari kuita here nemazvo kana kuti vari kutoda kumeka mari nesu vachingoti shedza.
Okay. Yeah, that should not be a complex process. You could identify my assets and administer them in accordance with the succession laws. Actually, as an office of the master, we encourage people to consult lawyers, to consult experts, legal experts, because most of them, they understand how to interpret and apply the laws. And I believe people will get valuable guidance from lawyers. Maybe can also tell me ukuthi padawa sangana kone lawyer pamwe appreciation yema inheritance laws cannot succession laws. Well, that will be something else. But generally, the lawyers, it's within them to quickly read and understand and apply the law. So the winding up of an estate, it's a process which should not take long, everything being equal. Within 3 months, an estate of low value can be finalized, or even at a much more lesser time. The law provides that even within 6 months, an estate of higher value in a can actually be finalized, as long as you appoint the right person as an executor. Which is why I always want to try and encourage people to where it's possible, to approach lawyers who understand inheritance law, to approach professionals who are well trained in this area. Because as long as the process is being led by someone who is honest and who appreciates the processes and the complexities involved, they can quickly wind up the estate. But I know there's always this feeling, you see. But remember, when you're dealing with an estate, number one, I'll tell you the bulk of my estates that we administer, I even over 50 years, 60, 70, 50, my 50 and below my shome, according to our survey. So much that vazhinji vavo vatorine vana vama adults, vama major, vato self-supporting. Mona, saka tinenge chiti, iwo uri kuda kunzi access something either from your father or mother. You see, achisi chako in the first place. Ndecha mumwe munhu, ndecha baba wako, ndecha mai wako. You see, so why don't you get guidance from the legal expert so that it's quickly done? You see, ukada kuita wega, kazhinji ndopa vanozo delay a process. You end up still wakunosika legal guidance wewe as executor, a lay executor. So if possible, as much as possible, we encourage people to ingogara a legal expert as executor or a professional as executor. Ngogara mangowana chi guidance. Pamunombozo isa a lay person. Yes, pamuanozia. There's no, and we tried also to give guidance of a general nature, because that is of kuvapa legal advice. So itodai, mozodai, takutorera malawyers basara bas, cannot my professionals bas. You see, so we encourage families to get it right the first time. They should trust my lawyers. As road can pakamboitao aka abuse estate or even my professionals no, we have good lawyers, excellent lawyers who are specialists in these areas, who understand these areas, and even my professional executors who are disciplined, who are honest, who also understand this. So it's a question of approaching such people and consult, and then get the estate wound up within the shortest possible time. So it's easy for such people to identify us. They know where to go. Kunetwa did search, they know how it's done. CVR search, approach municipal offices for those assets as cinema title deeds. They know where to go. You see, my banks, they know the types of letters to write. They know how to engage. And for information, we've also noticed that when the estates are administered by lawyers or professionals, they have capacity to resolve my disputes even within families, because they can easily decipher issues as they can even engage. Remember, my families to my factions. Vachifightana pachavo vachidi saka dzimwe faction inenge ine lawyer rayo kana kuti ina consultant wayo, the other one ine. Saka when lawyers meet, it becomes easy because they can understand each other. No, look, direction you to run the client yako, I think it's against the law. Pakudai. Chichichi. When you so one sana, one out tatone ne resolution. But imagine a situation where Malay people you see, it will be a struggle and the fight will go on and on.
Because unonzwa nyaya dzekuti executor ari kufavor nhingi kuti ndakaona vakandoenda kuti vese vari kuda kutoronga kuti imba iende kune uyu inini vachindisiya, that kind of thing zvichiti
Yeah, my insecurities trust between beneficiaries themselves.
And these are siblings.
Yeah, they are siblings. People should understand that executor has no discretion to do what he or she wants. An executor is guided by law. Is guided by law. So zekuti mazona kana executor angava rigweta kana professional executor oro achinwa tea kana kuti saka oita sei, because sometimes anogona kuenda kana pa any ngiri restaurant client yomba yatosvika yomba yamuziva vongona vanhu vari vese. It doesn't mean kuti he's not going to follow the law because he's had a drink na somebody. You see, what matters is they should know that the law is there to protect them. You see, what is key is for them to understand the law and the administration processes. Where they have doubts and they have reservations, they can add them to our office. But I can assure you, my executors, they try their best to follow the law. Can I find out those that deviate from the law scandal? And we don't condone that. We don't encourage that. Relevant authorities will certainly take necessary measures to realign that person or to rein in that person.
There have been several wrangles reported concerning the distribution of estates. What are some of the common disputes you have encountered as the Master of the High Court, and how can they be resolved? And also, I want to also add this one. How can families and beneficiaries work together to minimize conflicts during this process? So these are two-pronged questions there.
Yeah. We're raising a very pertinent point. My disputes, my conflicts, my misunderstandings. That upon death of a parent, be it a father or a mother, I personally have witnessed my siblings fighting against each other. And unfortunately, among my families, some families are organized, very organized. We have very good families. But there are some element of greediness. At the same time, they claim that what has to be done. No man causes so much problems. Because when siblings fight, they fight and my potential beneficiaries. Instead of seeking legal advice or guidance, they turn in some cases vanova poison. Vanototanga kutaura kuti ningirikire iwo uri musikana kaiwe haupinde panhaka. You see, we've heard makesi vekuti ana bamukuru vanotaura kuti girl child is not entitled to inherit. Vachitoudza boys kuti uyu musamusiya pana paine mari collector rent, and then ichicollectwa illegally because it's only the executor who should be collecting rent house after death yemufi. But you find kuti mumusha vanozvipa masimba. Votaura kuti mukomana mukuru ndiye collector rent pakudistributa. Musikana apiwe. Musamupe because uyu akudze rudzi rwekwedu achapromota a wrong family. Those are some of the disputes that we witness, and it's wrong. A girl child is entitled to inheritance in much the same way as a boy child. But what we discovered is that lack of knowledge do promote conflicts. And I must mention this, we were lucky as an office. In 2018, the First Lady of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Her Excellency Dr. Auxilia Mnangagwa, vaka-approachwa nema widows akasiyana-siyana nezvichemo vachitaura kuti we are not happy nezvakati nezvakati nezvakati. Then she did her own research. Vachidanisoona kuti is it the problem yemaster's office or iproblem yevanhu vari kundaapproacha ye-lack of knowledge. Vakazonyatsoona to a larger extent i-lack of knowledge yema-inheritance laws ndo yadi yekunyanya ma-disputes. And she immediately launched the wills and inheritance campaigns. Vakati master ndoda kutenderera neofisi yenyu tibatsire ruzhinji rwemadzimai ma-widows ari kunetseka asi ndaona kuti pane problem. Kushaya zivo, havazoziye kwekuenda, havazoziye zvekuita. Umva tatenderera nawo ma-provinces ese tichiita ma-interface. Varivo vaita spearhead the campaign. Varivo guest of honor and vachiunganidza vanhu vakabetsereka. And zvakatobatsira even kureduce ma-disputes because vanhu vanga vakutoziva kuti girlchild are entitled munhu adzingwe pamba because ma-disputes amabvunza iwayo ndoekuti after death kumamisha kunyanya unoona mukadzi achidzingwa paanga achirima nemurume wake hanzi because wakaramba kugara wanaka waona because you refused to be inherited by a brother, so ibva pano hausina chako pano and stuff. So through those campaigns dzakaitwa spearheaded na-first lady zvakabetsera ofisi yedu kuti vanhu vawane zivo zvikaredusa ma-disputes. So zvizhinji zvinoflowa from lack of knowledge and understanding. Even as it stands, pane issue property grabbing ndoma ma-disputes ari kunetsa kuti soon after burial mangwana acho makuseni dare rinotoitwa buritsai zvinhu vanoburitsa zvese nemastovhu nema-kitchen units mibhedha everything zvinonzi zviri kugovewa ma-TV. The law doesn't permit that. The law permits distribution ye clothing jet and nothing else. You see, the law provides kuti distribution inotoitwa kwokupedzisira after approval ye process inenge yaitwa na-execute. But what is happening muma-communities atiri zvinhu zviri kugova panyaradzo and vanobva vagova even ne-livestock, mombe, chii, mota and so on. That is against the law. So those are some of the disputes that we witness. And even pane vana vanotaura kuti we want to sell the house. 2 out of 5 vanotaura kuti we want to sell. 3 vomba vati we want to keep or vice versa. But at the end pane vanhu kuti today kupiwa iri cash yatova imwe problem. So I'm happy that with the new law which was recently promulgated, Administration of Estates Amendment Act 2024, yakutaura kuti kana paita makakatamwa kuti can we sell, vamwe vachiti we can't, executor now have to approach the High Court oita application achitaura ma-circumstances, then the court rules in favor or against. Because the area yatotipa ma-headaches iyoyo. Because nongochiona kuti 2 vari tisiri kuda kuti imba itengeswe ndo vari kugarapo vari kubenefit, but ava vane right yekuwana something yekutoinherita share yavo. Saka at the end vaya vari kugara pavanomba vanzi can you buy out these other ones, capacity havana, but law inenge ichiti vari entitled. Saka at the end imba izongotengeswa kuti munhu vanhu wosheya iri mari, because munotaura kuti hatitoonane nemukoma anogara tingatopondani. Saka you can't force them because at the end law inenge ichingotarisa kuti after all haisi imba yani yavo ndeyeparent. But we are reluctant to sell my properties. We even discourage my executors kuti pamba pari kugarwa nema-beneficiaries, let's try to spare dzimba idzodzo. Saka with the new law, I'm sure there is now greater protection and transparency in the handling of selling my properties. But doma mwema sekamze maizongoshamisika kuti vana vakunzi vakuevhitwa. It's because my siblings, vana my potential beneficiaries pachavo, they don't have a common position. ati vaonana vatarisane vanotaura kuti hazvibatsiri kuti tigarisane tinourayana toisana namucheto and so on.
State of Affairs on Star FM, and we are unpacking the distribution of deceased estates and inheritance in Zimbabwe. Our guest is the Master of the High Court of Zimbabwe, Eldad Mutasa. Vari kunyatsotsanangura. Vamutasa tamboenda kuvateereri kuti timboclear questions avo. This is just speed response to each issue. I know kuti zvechida nguva yakareba. Uyu atanzi nice topic there kunyanya kucustomary marriage uko. Nditenda iyoyo. Na Prosper Gwatidzo hanzi my dad wants the house to be put in a trust. He already started the process, like the trust was formed. However, my dad's name is still on the title deeds. If he passes on, will my stepmom inherit the house, or he can make a will stating his wishes for the house to be put in the trust? Because we were told there's a huge figure needed to have the deed in trust name.
Yeah.
Okay, if you can respond to that one.
That's a very important question. It's one thing to form a trust. Then it's so for estate planning purposes, we encourage people to register, to form trusts as soon as possible. To go in a marriage, man, it's important to form a trust so that as you acquire assets, they do not need to be registered in your names. They will now be registered in the names of the trust. But if you form a trust, yes, after mamu marriage, mane assets akawanda, kuzoda ku transfer those assets from your names into the trust. Zane cost, because kana ine title deed pane ma conveyancing costs associated with the transfer, among other related costs. So it then becomes a very expensive. It will be a very noble idea, but it may be difficult to execute. And ukafa manje sezvekutaurwa nemtere, if you then die, usina kuchinja ownership yema assets into the trust, usina kunyora will awarding the same assets to the trust, then takwa apply my formulas and the surviving spouse may inherit the matrimonial home. You see, so the only way to avoid that is to make sure you register trust and you have properties transferred into the trust. Or if you can't afford, you then write a will to the effect that your assets will be transferred into your trust upon your death. Yes, then the assets, all the assets will be awarded to the trust. And for purposes of establishing a trust, you should consult a lawyer. Though basaravo, pani vakatotrainera izvozvo vane course dzenotari chichi, they understand kuti deed of trust tinoita sei, but unoona vanhu vanoda kuzama kuzviitira even mawills aya. Unotoona kuti uyu haana kubatsirwa negweta kana kuti neprofessional. Maona. So we always say, please, as much as possible, zvingaita kunge zvaita kacost, but it's worth it. Consult a lawyer, get guidance, and have something solid.
Maizena, Hans, what about a private executor who is taking too much time? It happens that my mom bought a stand from a friend and she died before they'd done the change of ownership. Now the son to the deceased seems to be greedy and claims the mother did not sell the stand, and yet my mother has agreement of sale and an affidavit. So we went to the Master of High Court and registered the estate as it has not been registered. We registered it as the creditors and opted for a private executor who is dragging since January and nothing has been done. My Zena then.
Yeah, and this is quite common. You know, when we buy my properties, especially pa ukama or pa friend, pa kuziyana, kazhinji kacho some formalities are not done to ensure that transfer to the buyer is done. Vanenge vachingotana pachisawira tozosota, but no one knows when one will pass on. Saka, unfortunately, the seller may pass on before transfer is effected. And once the owner of the property dies, you can't effect change of ownership without the involvement of an executor. So my advice is, as we transact, let's make sure that once we buy properties, let's push for transfer. But scenario yataurwa nemterere, it will be very unfortunate kana kuri kuti this person is a professional executor, because they must act professional. We expect them to execute their mandate efficiently and effectively. So at the end of the day, it will be a question of taking steps to compel the executor to act positively. The starting point may be writing a letter to our office complaining against the conduct of the executor, so that we can put the executor on terms. We have assisted the hundreds of people, of potential buyers or beneficiaries, just by writing a letter to the master, complaining, laying out clearly the basis of your complaint. And kuti inyatsobuda tsamba yako, sometimes it will be good to kuwana legal advice. Because remember, we are talking about an asset which is of high value. Imba is change. You see, why not seek professional legal advice? Kuti hand down to the situation like that. When you your whole letter, kana akasa actor is expected. Further steps will then be advised by the lawyer. Kuti this course of action. If it requires making an application to the courts and so on. But that all requires proper legal guidance. So there is remedy. There are ways to compel executors to act positively. But you need to consult the right people.
Okay. Please, Master, it's been a year and ndichizama kuregister kwa Master Estate yevabereki ndakanzi file riri ku National Archive, and for the past 8 months ndinoenda kwa Master vanongoti harisati ravepo apa kumba yave hondo kusawirira nema-siblings. Where can we get help or report, please?
Vaita rombo rakanaka, because tiri pano tikutaura nenyika yedu yese yeZimbabwe. They can approach us ku office kwedu or nearest office ya Master of High Court, because file ziri ku archives, it means harisi kuda kuregister. It's already in existence, but probably rakafinalizwa or rakanga raju kuti for archiving. So it's a question of approaching us. Either kana uchiona kuti pamwe wasunyatsowana good service pa front office paid, but we've been doing our best to train our officers, women, our front offices, to know what to say to the clients and how to assist. But since Arutura Dota, probably are with our challenges, anogona kukwira nehierarchy. Mwana oenda to the supervisor or kuti approach at an open door. Mwana in the servant leadership. We are open to members of the public to approach us. It has been while the shades are who access a record without success. Can you say? But it's all about it's very simple, because every week we retrieve my files from archives. So Gava feel free, and then I want to take the opportunity to anyone vanema issues equal must. Vakangona maybe ku front office vanogona nge vasiri kubatwa as expected, because remember we also have a vision as an office which feeds to the bigger vision of government. Mona NDS one, access to justice. So we don't want to achieve that vision through characters are not going to be serious purpose. Whilst we try to train them and so, but a character or two, will receive a training and do well. Feel free to approach us. We are open. Senior management, yes, and the other officers, feel free to up to my level, so that we ensure that people get quality service. And the basara women of Ambasakanak. You see, and I'm not Wabamanore and name Epopai. Maybe Panodamari, which is dying. Kanokaton, Wapaita demand a mari. We'll be happy with cannot talk on some trepa. President is going to phone and record. Kunechi will be very happy with the no Tonga, but I go phone won't go Munzar. Because we have zero tolerance to corruption. But people being people, you never know. So to eradicate any form of corrupt activities, we come to us, or even to go to other relevant. We work well on organizations like I say Zaki, NPA, Judicial Service Commission, Ministry of Justice. We complement each other. Police, CID, Zetherapy, police, departments, commission of crimes, CID, Chichi. We work very well. To expose zimwe zvakaipa zvinenge zvichiitika, we will be happy to assist. So ngauye kumaoffices kwedu.
A lot of questions here. The final one, Vamchema, my producer, I think we'll have to have part 2 here because the issues are raised one. But the final one from our listeners, Vokana uchigara nemurume akamborora first wife yake vakasiyana but haana kuchekesa muchato. Zvofamba sei apa first wife yake yakutogara nemumwe murume?
Yeah, my questions iwayo taima wana sterek even up to now tinoma wana patiri kuita ma interface anenge organized na excellence the first lady, because even up to now tichiri kuraida on him awareness campaigns, because vakuita ma follow up programs vakafoma first ladies widows association. Saka pavanounganidza thousands of widows paipai vanotikokawo to collaborate, to taura about these issues they are coming up. Saka tikumva tavapa chenjedzo madzimai aya kuti kana pakamboita previous marriage isina kugurwa, chenjera kuti uri kuitiswa, because kana marriage yekutanga iri monogamous, one man one wife in terms of the general law, inotofanira kugurwa neHigh Court first. Kana isina kugurwa neHigh Court ukaratidzwa affidavit rakanyorwa kunzi takarambana musi wa28 November 2013 oro mudhayari makanyorwa, ziya kuti uri kutambiswa bhora risina mweya, because zvichaitika ndezvokuti murume azofa, wemuchato wewe zvisinei nekuti akune umwe murume, it doesn't count, akangoproducer valid marriage certificate one man one wife yake isita kutoti imimi hamuchaqualify even muine mumwe muchato, because zvinoitika nenyaya yekuti masystems edu pamwe apike kuti pane mumwe muchato, kotoitwa muchato pamusoro pemumwe muchato, even uinawo wakanaka wakalaminatwa, tinongoutarisa tongotaura kuti in the eyes of the law hausi valid, totoconsider wemukadzi wekutanga wauri kuti akaenda ende pamwe unenge wakatoita kakubvaruka, but une weight yevalidity. so people should do my background checks. Patinoita mawinisi vanachitaura kuti tinoita under office ya first lady, tinowanzosekesa ndichitaura kuti don't fall in love, stand in love, because ukaita 4 hauchaoni. Saka totseka masettings kuti vakapedzerana here vanhu. Was a divorce order granted? Yes, that is key. But wanyura murudo unotya kubvunza, especially kubvunza murume kuti ndikamubvunza anozofunga kuti this type inogarika naye. Yet it's within your rights.
And then that final question, this one is definitely the final one. That's Manero Akanaka. I'm a woman aged 33, ndinodawo kuziva. Mai vedu vakashaya 2006 tikasara nababa. Mai pavakafa taigara mu2 rooms cottage. Ndakurawo ndakatanga kudevelopa pamba. Ndiri kuvaka main house izvezvi. Baba havashande. He remarried few years back. My question is, will my brother and I be entitled to the house if our father passes on first?
Mutonzwa kuti ndokumwe kushaya zivo manje. Ari kudevelopa property siri yake. Maona. And mune contractual agreement here nemuridzi weproperty. You see, at the end of the day, unogona kuluza out. Because uchanzi wakanzi nani udevelop this property. Yapo, yatone value. So kana papa inheritance yakasiyana nezvinotariswa kana vanhu vachidivorce. Padivorce vanhu vanotarisa contribution chichi, inheritance panonyanya kutariswa kunzi chii chakasiyiwa chiri muzita remufi, kunzi panemba. Munhu anoinherita by virtue of being either a spouse or a child. hapanyanyotariswe contribution ko tikatotarisa contribution yacho transaction maona yet inheritance iri relationship. Are you a spouse or a child, a parent or a brother, depending on circumstances? It's never about contribution. So I would encourage my sister kuti vato make sure kuti approach magweta vavabatsire kuti regularize zvavari kuita izvi. Either kana pachiitwa chingave an agreement of some sort pasati pafiwa iri binding, I don't know, because uri kuisa energy pachinhu chisiri chako. Haugoni kuzonyanyoita simba, ndo paunozonzwa munhu akuti ndakuda kupasa rumu angu, ndakuda kuita sezvato nemabotso. This can be avoided kana uchinge wawana legal guidance yakanaka kuti wadi kuisa mari kustand kwako, maona because at the end inogona kushewa equally. Zvongonzwa itira mubereki wako because hapasi pako ndepemubereki. So my advice is ngaatsike legal advice. Onyatsooneka kunzi anga protect ke sei, but apa property siri yako it's not that easy.
Now let's close now. I'll talk to our producer so that we have part 2 with the Master of the High Court as he explains these issues. But as we close, are there any upcoming initiatives or programs that the Master of High Court will be implementing to educate the public about distribution and inheritance?
Okay. Yeah, I think at this juncture, I may also want to thank the government of Zimbabwe. Yakaitwa. Yandanchitaura yakuti Administration of Estate Amendment Act 2024. His Excellency ascended to that law in November 2024, and it was operationalized on the 24th of February 2025. This is a progressive law which seeks to empower the office of the master by establishing it as an autonomous statutory body, so that we have access to resources which will in turn ensure efficiency and effectiveness, promoting transparency in the process. So once everything is fully in place, we will certainly ensure that we have my awareness campaigns. Like I've said now, excellent the First Lady, we're not invited, but we need to complement my efforts through having our own awareness campaigns. And this new law was put in place to ensure that we are adequately empowered. And even in my recent engagements that we had with the Honorable Minister of Justice, Honorable Ziyambi Ziyambi, Vaitotoroti is doing everything in his power to ensure that we have an effective and vibrant board, no supervisor my operations edu, and once a board is in place, we can now recruit staff to beef up the complement that we have. And once we have adequate skilled staff, we should be able to carry out my awareness campaigns, and we should be able to decentralize into all provinces and in some districts. That is what motivated this new law. So it's very progressive. I foresee my exciting days coming where my operations office are going to be enhanced because of the new approach. So to the members of the public, watch this space, and I can assure you that with the move that was taken by government, they should witness a significant turnaround and improvement in the way we will be doing things in the master's office.
Thank you so much. We have come to the end of tonight's program, which we have been packing the distribution of the district estate and inheritance in Zimbabwe. Vanhu vandofunga vadzidza zvakawanda mafungiro atatinawo, but the main important thing is that we need the education to really appreciate this very complex topic, but which can be made easier if we know where we are going, if we know exactly the information, the correct information. Much appreciation to my guest, Master of the High Court of Zimbabwe, Mr. Eldad Mutasa. Tinotenda zvikuru nekuuya kwamaita.
Ndinotendawo nekuru invite.
Also, a big thanks to the producers of the show, Norman Muchemo and Selena Nyamangara. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Join me again next time on your favorite show, State of Affairs. And coming up next is the nationally famous show, Sungura Wednesday.